In this talk, I'd like to survey some of the resources that are available online to people who are interested in a deeper engagement with philosophy, but who may lack institutional access. As an enrolled student or staff member of a university, you automatically gain access to their research library as well as all their academic journal subscriptions through gateways like JSTOR and Sage. The latter is crucial as the journal article is the main medium through which academic research is published these days. How many times have you clicked on a link to an article only to find yourself at a paywall charging perhaps $20 for access to a single article in an academic journal? Well, the good news is there is a workaround for this. Not in every case, but there's a considerable amount of material that can be accessed directly and freely. So I'll talk through the kind of resources you can access directly, including articles from the best journals. I've divided this up into the following categories: primary sources, secondary sources books, and secondary sources articles. So let's talk about primary sources for a moment. In other words, the great works of philosophy from the ancient Greeks right down to our own time. Pretty much all the great books of philosophy can be accessed online simply by typing the name and author into a search engine. The editions and translations will invariably be out of copyright editions. For instance, Plato's works will invariably be the translations of Benjamin Jowett, made in the late 19th century. These can be found, for instance, at the Internet Classics Archive. I posted the addresses in the show notes below. And there is also the Perseus project, which contains a very large repository of ancient texts, both in translation and in the original languages. One of the advantages of Perseus is that the original texts in Greek and Latin, every single word is hot linked to the relevant dictionary entry. Another big advantage in the Perseus texts is that you get the Stephanus and Becker page numbering system, so you can follow references quite easily. Unfortunately, this is not the case with the holdings at the Internet Classics Archive, where those texts were uploaded without those page numbers. So Perseus is definitely advantageous in this respect. Happily, David Horan's recent translations of the works of Plato has the dual advantage of being written in up-to-date English and contains the Stephanus page numbers, and that can be found at the link below. Okay, so let's move on to the secondary sources, beginning with books. Here I will only publicize those sites which follow copyright law. There are some sites which make books available, but in ways that breach copyright laws. Anyone interested in those sites will just have to find them for themselves. The most important repository online, then, is the Internet Archive. Here you'll find millions of books and articles on every subject under the sun. There are two classes of book here, those which are out of copyright and those which are still under copyright. Those which are out of copyright can be downloaded directly and kept locally in the normal way, whereas those within copyright can be borrowed for a limited period of time, either an hour or 14 days. This latter service functions very much like a traditional brick-and-mortar public library service. Downloads of out-of-copyright or open-access material is simply downloaded in the normal way and saved, but for borrowing books you will need to create an account at Internet Archive, which allows you to borrow up to 10 books simultaneously. Books can be borrowed for either a 1-hour or 14-day period, but you will also have to download and install a piece of software called Adobe Digital Editions, ADE. ADE enables you to download and read books which are protected by digital rights management software. So when you download a borrowed book from Internet Archive, you do it through a small file called urllink.acsm. See the slide. I usually download this file directly to my desktop and then just overwrite it on each occasion. By clicking on this file, you initiate the download to your ADE console. Internet Archive has a large and growing holding of up-to-date scholarly works, which are borrowable, as well as a vast holding of out-of-copyright and open-access material. I think Internet Archive is an invaluable resource, and it easily makes its way into my personal top 5 sites on the Internet list. Well, that's books. Now, what about articles? Before I talk about journal articles, I want to talk a little bit about two important encyclopedias of philosophy. There's the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Stanford is by far the largest of the two. For both encyclopedias, each article is written by a specialist in the relevant area, and some of them can run to as many as 30 pages, and always ends with a bibliography for further reading. Editorial information, like when the article was first posted and last revised, is given, as well as author details. I cannot recommend these sites too highly, as they are also invaluable resources for students and scholars of philosophy alike. Finally, journal articles, the kind that are usually behind a paywall if you do not have institutional access. Now, there are two sites where you can often find many of those elusive articles. Those sites are academia.edu and researchgate.net. These function like a kind of academic Facebook come LinkedIn social media format sites. Here, individual scholars who have opened accounts will often post their own articles which have already been published in academic journals and make them freely available to the world. But by no means exhaustive, nevertheless, you will find a lot of material here that would be otherwise inaccessible. For academia.edu, the accent is on the arts and humanities. For ResearchGate, it tends towards STEM. There's a considerable crossover in both, and if you can't find something on one, you may find it on the other. It's always worth checking both. So going forward, I'm going to include more and more references to material that is available online for those who want to pursue our topics in greater depth. So between direct searches using well-known search engines, the utterly magnificent Internet Archive, the two encyclopedias, and these two academic platforms, academia.edu and ResearchGate, there is a veritable wealth of philosophical material available only a mouse click or two away.